Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. By the time this video goes live, the made-to-order pre-order window for Warhammer Quest Cursed City will be about to close. For those who need to know, the exact deadline is 8 AM GMT on Monday the 21st of March 2022. In celebration of this, but mainly just because the YouTube algorithm loves a top 5 list, I bring you my 100% undisputed top 5 tips for not joining the ranks of the undead during your visits to Ulfenkarn. Number 5. Be proactive. In Cursed City, your heroes are powerhouses. They have the capacity to chuck out an obscene amount of damage in any given turn. As a simple example, if an uninspired Braskov is at full health, doesn't have to move during her turn, and has at least 1 6 as an activation dice, she can make 5 separate attacks. Each of those attacks has a 33% chance of inflicting 4 wounds. And 4 wounds is enough to instantly kill any zombie, skeleton, bat or rat that crosses your path. But your efficiency is directly tied to your health, and your health can go down rapidly. The first time you take a wound, you will lose an activation dice. The third time you take a wound, you will lose a second, and so on. As you lose those dice, the tables turn rapidly, and it is surprisingly easy to lose those dice. A Vargskar can inflict 5 wounds with a single attack, and can attack twice per turn. And sure, your heroes get armor rolls, but you can never defend more than 3 wounds from any one attack. You do the maths. The point is, don't let the enemies hit you. Hit them first. There's a reason so few enemies have ranged attacks, because if they did, you would die horribly. You need to take the fight to the enemy and kill the ones that are likely to be able to pop off an attack. If you can't kill them, make sure you move far enough away so they can't reach you. And good luck with that. Combat in Ulfenkarn is lethal. Every hit has the potential to cause massive damage or lingering effects that are no fun to deal with. Don't let the enemies take too many chances, and absolutely positively don't dawdle so they have a chance to empower. Empowering is something that happens when night falls in the city. Most of the time, you will enter the city during the day, and the day tracker advances at least 1 space per turn. Once night falls, the enemies become more powerful. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But this daylight tracker is your timer, and it's a neat one. A lot of dungeon crawlers impose different ways to make you keep moving. Cursed City comes up with a way that ensures you want to always keep up the pace, but doesn't penalise you too severely with instant failure if you should start dragging your heels. Of course, the daylight tracker is in play for every type of adventure you undertake, but if you go on a deliverance mission, there is a secondary, more immediate and visceral timer. There is a wailing wall of skulls that chases you through the dungeons. If it catches you, it inflicts serious harm. Again, it's not an instant lose situation, but it sure as heck isn't something you want to have happening. But all of these things, the screaming skulls, the daylight tracker, the relatively squishy enemies that all throw a meaty punch, they're all things that mean being proactive counts. Make those run actions, don't hang about too long, don't let enemies linger on the board, focus on your objectives. 4. Inspire quickly. Your heroes will level up over time. You will get empowerments which serve as permanent boosts to particular stats, and you will gain new traits based on your character class as you go up levels. But regardless, each time you start a new journey in the city of Ulfenkarn, you will start in an uninspired state, and only by gaining 3 inspiration points will you be able to become inspired, and you really want to inspire as quickly as possible because inspired heroes are absolute wrecking machines. There are 2 ways to achieve this. First, at the end of any round in which you killed enemies, you get to roll a d12. If you roll equal to or less than the total number of wounds of all the enemies you killed, then you get 1 inspiration point. The second way is usually more consistent and dictates how you should play early on in any given journey. Each hero has a path to glory, which is a specific way to gain inspiration points. For example, Jelson gains an inspiration point every time he kills a champion, while Dagnai gets 2 inspiration points every time he draws realm stones or treasures from the discovery deck. By playing in character to your hero's particular strengths, you will inspire more quickly, and you should definitely do this. Once you have become inspired, you can no longer use your path to glory to gain additional inspiration points, so you can become more flexible in how you approach things at that time, but let your path to glory guide your strategy for the first few turns of the game at least. Oh yeah, And never, ever, unless you feel you really need to, spend inspiration points on anything else until you have inspired. That inspiration will be vital, especially if the night falls and the enemy's in power. Speaking of which, number 3, check those enemy stats and abilities. There aren't that many different types of enemies in Ulfenkarn, but each one is a unique creature with a specific set of skills and behaviours. It's worth taking a moment to study the enemy character sheets the first time they spawn, and then to take a casual glance every now and again during play just to remind yourselves, so you are constantly aware of what the enemy might be doing. Each enemy gets 3 basic stats: move, wounds and size. Make note of the size because small enemies can cram in 2 to a square, which means twice as many of them can get into base contact to hit you. Enemies also have at least 1 weapon action, the same as heroes. Make sure to take note of any special effects the attacks have, such as the corpse rats having a bite action that inflicts disease. Next, each enemy has a list of special rules. These are generally very straightforward, but watch out in particular for enemies like the Kosagi who can reduce incoming damage, and enemies like the vampires who can ignore incoming damage completely. Each enemy also has a behaviour table that you roll on to see what they do each turn. In a lot of cases, enemies are going to end up moving and attacking, but there are special behaviours to be aware of. And finally, perhaps most importantly, remember that each enemy has an empowered state. This activates as soon as night falls. You will flip over the enemy character cards to their empowered side and suddenly you have a much tougher challenge on your hand. When this happens, do spend a moment checking exactly what changes have happened for each type of enemy. For example, a regular zombie moves 2 spaces during a move action. However, an empowered zombie suddenly gets to move 4. That means an empowered charging zombie is suddenly moving 8 spaces per turn. That's the kind of thing that can really take you by surprise if you aren't paying attention. Empowered enemies invariably hit harder and more consistently, but their behaviour tables also change, giving them an increased chance to do their more powerful abilities. For instance, a regular Ulfenkarn skeleton has a 2 in 12 chance of summoning reinforcements, while all empowered skeletons have a 3 in 12 chance. The one thing that won't change when an enemy inspires is the number of wounds they have. That means that while the enemies become more deadly, they become even more like glass cannons, and this feeds back into point 1 on being proactive. Ulfenkarn soldiers may change from rolling 2d6 combat dice with a 30.5% chance of inflicting 2 wounds to rolling a d12 combat dice with a 66.6% chance of inflicting 2 wounds, but they still only have 2 wounds of their own. If you hit them before they hit you, it doesn't matter if they're empowered or not. 2. Check for enemy interactions. This is important. The enemies in Ulfenkarn aren't your usual grab bag selection of random encounters, all working independently. This is an army under the iron rule of Radukar the vampire. They all have the same goal, and they all work within a military organisation. That means in some cases, the enemies work together and become more powerful. The most simple example of this is the Ulfenkarn banner bearer. When any Ulfenkarn enemy attacks, they get to re-roll failed weapon actions while the banner bearer is visible to them. However, once Watch Captain Halgrim turns up, the Ulfenkarn really kick it up a gear. They get +1 damage on all their weapon actions while Halgrim is present, because I guess they really want to make a good impression. But also, Halgrim has several behaviours that benefit other Ulfenkarn on the board. There's Summoned Bodyguard, which deploys slain Ulfenkarn soldiers as reinforcements, and Disciplined Advance, which lets all Ulfenkarn on the board take an advance action, which is a bonus activation on top of the Ulfenkarn's regular actions. Gorslav the Gravekeeper has similar behaviours that benefit zombies, while Torgilius the Chamberlain has behaviours keyed to bats and rats. 1. Power Up. I've already spoken about becoming inspired, but that's a kind of fleeting power that resets at the end of the current journey. There are 3 other ways to become more powerful, each with their own drawbacks. The first is the treasure cards. You find these by searching and they are generally quite useful. The downsides are you can normally only carry 1 and they are one-use items. Personally, I love one-use items. They are my favourite kind of power-up because I like the choices they create. The next way to power up is to level up. After 3 successful journeys you gain a new trait based on your class, which is a permanent ability. The downside is you are tied to a specific path of skills and you only get them through completing quests. The final way to power up gives you the most control. During journeys you will find realm stones and you can use those to buy empowerments for your weapons and armour. Each character is allowed 1 weapon empowerment and 1 armor empowerment. I recommend trying to get some decent empowerments as quickly as possible. Bear in mind that after a journey, if you don't spend your realm stones immediately, they are lost, so you can't save up for good things. That means during a quest, you should search as often as possible to get that loot. Scavenge missions are, as you would expect, the best way to do this. Furthermore, it's generally a good idea to pool your resources and buy the best empowerments you possibly can after each mission. While all empowerments are good, it's the really expensive ones that you need to tackle the game's biggest challenges. When you are shopping for empowerments, always look at the best you can buy at that time and check which empowerments help which hero the most. Try to kit out heroes for specific operations during your games, preferably operations tied into their path of glory and how they should be played. For example, make one of your characters a monster hunter, make another one as robust as possible to be the ultimate tank. Also, look at shoring up any deficits in the characters. Even when inspired, Dag Knight only rolls a d6 for agility, so an empowerment that boosts his agility is probably going to be more useful than an empowerment that boosts his already formidable combat abilities. 2 empowerments to watch out for are the ones that prevent enemies from reducing or ignoring damage. These are the best way to plow through Kosagi, Nightguard and vampires later in the game, and whenever you have a chance to buy one, you should. And that's it. That's my probably pretty obvious top 5 tips for staying alive in the lands of the dead. But here, one more thought for the road. Bonus round, don't forget your firewood stakes. Just don't do this. Just don't. The game gives you weapons for a reason. Use them. And that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.